That was something to hear. Glenn, I think my first question to you is why are you here with me instead of out there being concertmaster?
Do you realize in 11 years of Live from Lincoln Center, this is the first time that I've been able to go out, and it's such a treat to hear a colleague play this concerto.
Were you in the audience? Is that what
I was in the audience. I heard at least 3/4 of this piece, and then I had to come down here, of course, but it was magnificent, and it's wonderful. It's a different perspective, of course, to
Yeah, it is.
be able to hear it out there and not fuss with notes and make sure that you count correctly.
I wondered about that. You know, when you're playing, you do get a certain perspective, and you have to allow for that, I think, because you're in a section that you hear more predominantly than the
You're
other
really
part.
concentrating on the tutti part, and of course, when there's a cadenza, then you're free to listen. But otherwise, it's not really a perfect way of listening to a concerto.
Is it different from listening to another orchestra? When you're hearing your own orchestra and everything, does that give you a kind of a different feeling?
Well, of course, you're more on your toes when you're responsible for bringing everybody in, and you know, as I say, the concentration level is at such a high. But this was such a treat to go out and be able to listen to Lorne, who I've known for so long, and it was such a magnificent performance.
I think it's relatively unusual, isn't it, where the first chairs of really fine orchestras have such active solo careers often. That doesn't happen as much in Europe, I don't think, does it?
Not so. There's been a great history, though, of especially cellists coming out of first desk.
Piatigorsky?
There's Piatigorsky, and it's gone down to Lynn Harrell, and I believe even before that, Fournier and Foreman played in orchestras. Just sort of a tradition. Not so much for concertmaster. There was the great Joseph Fuchs, who still teaches at Juilliard, and he once said to me that it's one thing to come from the stage, from the wings, but another thing to get up from the ranks of the orchestra and play, because already there is a qualification there. You're from the orchestra, so you're not considered a real soloist, but then you're expected to play like one, and if not better than the traveling ones.
It had always been my understanding there are some orchestras that where the players are very reluctant to be thrust out into a solo limelight like that.
Well, usually,
Here's
yeah, bravo.
bravo, magnificent.
See you again.
Wonderful,
Good
Lord.
to see you. Well, that's
That was a great performance.
that's some concerto, yeah.
Yeah, should be a violin concerto, but it's all right.
Listen, fiddle concerto's hard enough, but this was harder.
That is marvelous. You could. I was just thinking, you two have done solo. Should I call it solo duets? You did the Brahms.
We did the Brahms double.
And the triple.
with the
That's
Philharmonic.
Yes.
Yeah,
When,
but
when
you-
was it that you did that?
What year?
Oh, it was about 4 years ago that we did it with Mazur, actually.
Yeah,
Oh, I
that's
thought
right.
you
That's
were-
right.
Yeah,
you
we
did.
played the Brahms double concerto.
yes,
That was
yes.
one of
Oh, yes.
his first guest stints here
That's
in
right.
New York.
That's right.
And we had a wonderful time with
That's
him.
right.
there.
That's
Little did we know at that time that he was going to be our new music director.
Right.
But no, we had
But
a
we
great
did the
time.
Beethoven triple.
That's
and,
right.
And
We
the
did
Brahms
that down in
double
Florida.
Fort Lauderdale, I think.
We both have separate careers as soloists. We go down to Florida and to California, and we play
That's right.
Yeah.
solos
Now,
there.
is there an increase now in the tradition of the Philharmonic having orchestra members as soloists? When I think of you're just doing this concerto, and you did the Beethoven violin concerto to sold out
Yeah.
series
3
recently.
weeks ago with Andre Previn.
Yeah, yeah, that's.
It was a pleasure to play that piece. It's the first time here in New York for me to do that.
I'm just wondering. I know the tradition is alive and well, but is it on the increase? Do you think, with regard to the Philharmonic?
Well, it started with Zubin Mehta. I think he liked to promote
Right.
certain individuals, from the orchestra.
Yeah.
Not necessarily principals. I mean, we had others too, and, which is nice. I hear some orchestras don't do this so much, but
Well, I mean, the Live from Lincoln Center about 2 years ago, Lauren played the Foray elegy,
Oh,
and I
yeah,
did
we
the
had-
Carmen Fantasy.
yes.
Yeah.
And there were 2 other soloists from the orchestra. It was a
Yeah.
total evening devoted to our colleagues, first desk players.
I have the feeling there is a general feeling of support from the orchestra, and where
Oh, yes.
you,
Oh, yes.
you
We
know
get
they're
that.
your friends and family, and they and they're
Yeah.
glad that you're doing it.
They're
While-
definitely behind
Mr.
us.
Downs, while you're on the subject of soloists with orchestras, I'd like to get a point across that's been bugging me for many years now. The feeling on the outside, that if an orchestra principal gets up and plays a concerto, it's tolerated. It's nice. But after all, it's a different league than the guest soloists that come in and play, And I think it's time that people realized that what we do in the orchestra, if anything, is much more involved. I mean, the things we have to play with the orchestra plus chamber music and all of that, and to be prepared to play a concerto at the same time it's never easy, but the point is that I can remember some very fine soloists. Leonard Rose, who left before I came here, Frank Miller, I believe, from Chicago, and I'm sure Glenn can mention some other concertmasters, but for me, he's my favorite. No, I'm serious, seriously. Of all the violinists I've heard, I mean, maybe I shouldn't say this, but
Gotta be careful
my
now.
wife might enjoy it. we were listening to a recording we did with Mehta, with Vivaldi, I think it was. And she listened to a violin, she says, "That's not Glenn." I said, "Why? Why do you say that?" She said, "Well, I know Glenn's playing. That's not Glenn. He's much warmer." It turned out, I won't say who it was because it happened to be somebody from our ranks. But the point is that his sound and his playing is equal to anything in the world today, you know, and I just
And the
want
same goes over here. I mean, Lauren is such a first-class cello. He should be out there playing solos all the time.
Now, in the time remaining, I just want to ask you, more than one conductor has remarked that the Philharmonic is an orchestra of soloists. Does that in any way constitute an impediment toward playing in concert? I mean, the team effort, where if you've got a bunch of individuals,
Oh, I see
you
what you
know,
mean, yes,
is that a challenge to a conductor, do you think? I should ask.
I think so, in a way. I mean, I think we do have very individual type players here. I think any one of our players in the string section can get up and play concertos. I think that we really have high-quality musicians here.
But you still know how to play.
Oh, you have to.
together.
Yeah.
You have to. That's the thing.
Yes,
Yes.
all of them are professional orchestral players as well. But I think it does take a very strong
Yeah.
personality on the podium.
I have heard of cases where solo players didn't do so well.
Yeah, you mean
In an
playing
ensemble, yes.
Sure,
I have
sure.
heard of that. And,
Well, but that just shows a versatility, because you guys are excellent soloists, but
yeah.
you also can be
well,
team members.
that's what we try and
Yep.
This is
proud
great.
of, you know.
Well, I got to say another bravo. That was a
was great.
magnificent,
Well, thank you.
magnificent rendition
Thank
of
you.
that. And I want to thank both of you for
a
talking.
pleasure.
We're going to come back here in a moment. Now I'm going to talk to Kurt Mazur
Okay.
Good.
about you guys, among other things. Thank you much. I'll let you
right.
go now.
Good.
All right.
Thank you. Pleasure.